If you're like most Americans, you have some of your investments allocated in tax-free accounts like Roth IRAs, some of your investments allocated in tax-deferred accounts like 401ks, and some in taxable accounts like brokerage. If so, you may be wondering if you should be taking more risk in your Roth accounts than your other investments. Turns out, yes. In today's video, I'll explain why. If you have Roth IRAs or Roth 401ks in your portfolio, you should be allocating 100% of these dollars to a stock allocation. Why? The answer is pretty simple. These are your most tax-efficient investments, and they'll remain tax-free right up until your death and even 10 years beyond. Roth IRAs are a bit like rocket fuel. You want the biggest returns in your portfolio to take place in a tax-free environment. You want to keep 100% of those huge returns. Let me see if I can put this in a different way. Would you rather keep 100% of a 12% return or 100% of a 5% return? Okay, now which of your assets should you be allocating towards bonds? Let's assume your risk tolerance calls for a 40% position in bonds. The prevailing thought says you should allocate your 401ks or other tax-deferred accounts along with your brokerage accounts into bonds. Why? Because you'll end up surrendering a portion of these investments to tax along the way. And if that's the case, you'd just as soon do it on the portion of your portfolio that has the lowest returns. So here's an example. Let's say your risk tolerance calls for a 60-40 stock bond allocation. Let's also say you have a Roth IRA, a traditional 401k, and a taxable brokerage. You'd want to invest your Roth IRA 100% in an aggressive stock portfolio like a total stock market index fund. The prevailing thought is you would then allocate your 401k and brokerage account into a bond allocation like a total bond index fund, so long as that adds up to around 40% of your total portfolio. If those accounts add up to more than 40% of your portfolio, you could allocate a portion of stocks so that you end up at that 60-40 overall allocation. Me personally, I'm just not a huge fan of bonds. Why? 3 words: fixed index annuities. Now, before you tune me out and turn off the video, let me share just a bit of academic research to explain why I far prefer fixed index annuities to bonds. A renowned finance professor from the University of Chicago by the name of Dr. Roger Ibbotson showed that fixed index annuities have the potential to outperform bonds in the near future and normalize the return pattern of a portfolio because of their guarantee against loss. Ibbotson ran hypothetical return simulations from 1927 to 2016 and found that fixed index annuities had an annualized return of 5.81% compared to 5.32% for long-term government bonds and 9.92% for large cap stocks over that period. Keep in mind, this includes periods of both rising and falling bond yields. He also determined that the maximum annualized return for a 3-year holding period of the fixed index annuities was 27.56% versus 30.76% for large cap stocks and 23.3% for long-term government bonds. The minimum annualized 3-year return of the FIA was 0 compared with a 27% loss for large cap stocks and a 2.32% loss for long-term government bonds. Ibbotson also compared the performance of 3 different portfolios. The first one had a 60-40 stock bond allocation. The second portfolio had 60% stocks, 20% bonds, and 20% FIAs. And the third portfolio had 60% stocks and 40% FIAs over that same 1927 to 2016 time period. What he found was the average return of the 60-40 stock bond portfolio was 8.55%. The average return of the 60-20-20 stock bond FIA portfolio was 8.66%, while the average return of the 60-40 stock FIA portfolio was 8.77%. Keep in mind that not only did the stock FIA portfolio increase the return, it did so with less risk and while protecting the investor to some extent from irrational investment behavior that erodes returns over time. In summary, you should absolutely allocate your Roth IRAs to your most aggressive investments. You want your tax-free accounts to house your most explosive investments. Conventional wisdom says allocate the rest of your assets to bonds, but I think there's a far better alternative. Instead of investing those other accounts in bonds, you should incorporate a fixed index annuity into your overall strategy. Doing so will increase your return, lower your risk, lower the standard deviation of your entire portfolio, and give you a better outcome over time. By the way, you don't have to love annuities for this strategy to work. You just have to love the idea of increasing the likelihood that your money will last as long as you do. I'm David McKnight. Thanks for watching.